You are listening to the Cattle Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The Cattle Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am Jim, your goofy and screwed up host. And with me, as always, is my partner.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. This is Rocco. You just opened up a big can of worms.
I'm saying, hey, listen, I'm going to take the heat for this one because we have a guest on today's show for the second time. Because the first time we recorded this, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I screwed up and forgot to hit the record on my microphone. So we had nothing but like big giant splashes of empty space. So luckily he was kind enough to come back on here on the show. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. But before we do, I will not let Rocco pass without torturing him with the engineering joke of the week. Okay, Rocco, you've already heard this one actually, but I'm going to torture you with it again. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What did the structural engineer say to the dentist?
What did he say?
He said, I'm an expert in bridges too. Huh? Yeah. Even worse the second time around. All right, folks. Okay, so the good thing is we have one of our absolute favorite guests on the show today, a guy who is almost as much of a smartass as I am. Ramesh Sridharan from Autodesk is here. So Ramesh, thank you for being back on the show twice. Oh, goodness. So for those of you who don't know, Ramesh is the Director of Reality Conditions over at Autodesk. And I think that's a new title for him. So I'm going to have him explain what that is and what he does over there, what the new and impressive title means. But before we do get into today's show, let's let Ramesh introduce himself to all of our new listeners out there. So Ramesh, what can you tell folks about your brave new title and your background and what do you do over at Autodesk?
Sure. Don't tell anyone Autodesk. They don't know I'm working there yet. So
they still haven't figured it out?
Exactly. Yeah. Until they figure it out, I'm good. So, I came to Autodesk about 10 years back. It's a part of the acquisition. I started as what they call it as an agile product owner. Then I became an initiative manager, like a project manager, like S3 projects. Then kind of a product manager, senior product manager, and dev manager. And I'm lucky to be got the title of director a couple of weeks back. So great colleagues, even the great team we worked with, and even great customers who trust and believe in me, like open-mindedness. That's what carrying me through.
That's a good thing. And I will say, I get a lot of communications, work a lot with Ramesh on the ReCap side. I'm part of that group and get all his regular emails and newsletters and updates about what's going on. And he really has just provided an absolutely fantastic resource over there. So it's always a pleasure to work with him. So, all right. So like I said, it's always nice, from my end to see the truly qualified people in our industry kind of advancing to higher positions, where they can help steer things in the right direction for those of us who actually use a lot of the products that we talk about here on the Cattle Call. Unlike Rocco and I, who are just, really good at BSing our way through stuff, Ramesh is actually one of the most talented guys in the infrastructure space. And he's leading the charge on a lot of those initiatives over at Autodesk, particularly around the reality capture and the Esri integration spaces. And I think he's really doing a great job of helping people understand the potentials of those services. So, let's kind of start with the title, Ramesh. Right? What do you do now as the director, right? That you weren't doing before.
Gotcha. Actually, I must be really talented if I made you guys believe I know something.
That's all it is. Fake it till you make it, man.
Yeah. So the job position is a position right now. Autodesk. The responsibility is people wear different hats and everything. It's funny. Earlier in my career, I heard one great advice that dress for the position you like to have, but I kind of extended that towards the position I would like to have. So, as much as you can at least. So I always try to go down to the basics. And now being a director, it sure contains way more responsibilities, but putting the basics into the effect is what I try to do. More ownership, with the teams and everyone you work with, let them take the ownership because a lot of talent there. I don't have to be the only person who makes a decision and think about it and stuff, and just outsource it, get all the inputs from everyone, groom and encourage more people, more talented people you work with in Autodesk and outside. So that helps a lot. Communication is key. Again, this is another advice I got early in my career. If you have to make an error in communication, do it on over communication rather than under. So I kind of take it a little bit seriously too. And mostly just be clear on the requirements, the vision, and especially for internal and external stakeholders. It's one of those things I think we talked about it last time or a few times back to be firm on your thought process, but open-minded enough to get everyone's feedback and incorporate it. Those are the few things I like to do with the Autodesk, and hopefully that's enough. What do you think?
I think that works. And I think you're on the right track too. There's so many folks who get into those, high-level management positions and they feel like they have to be the guys doing everything, and it's not the way to do it, right? You have subject matter experts, let them be experts. You just point them in a direction and say, go that way and make something happen and let them handle the details.
Exactly. Since I also came from the startup, some of these traits are born from that experience, but obviously I learned a lot from the great leaders I worked with and interact with my managers I worked with also in Autodesk. It kind of shaped me up.
Yeah, it's always nice. All right. So look, folks, Ramesh is, undoubtedly, he is the king of the Autodesk reality capture world. And he hosts, weekly trainings and he sends out newsletters and he does a million other things in this arena, right? So he is the perfect guy to have on the show today to tell us all about the important updates for the new 2025 ReCap release and all of its related products as well. So, like I said, before we screwed this up the first time, Ramesh, we had just had your buddy Tim Yaris on a couple of weeks or so before that. And he was talking about, all the Civil 3 updates for 2025 and kind of the general infrastructure changes. But I wanted to get, your thoughts on ReCap and what you think are the best new features in the 2025 release. What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. By the way, Tim is a great guy. He's doing some phenomenal job on Civil 3D. A lot more coming in pipeline this year. I learned a lot from him. I think I might have mentioned this in the previous podcast too. Sometime I got envy from that guy. He handles multiple things seamlessly. Anyway, so yeah, kudos to Tim. From the ReCap side, the theme is still the same we talked about, because that's the vision the ReCap Pro Reality Solution Autodesk is going, where the cloud-based workflows, the data management, visualization, and sharing, people should be able to use those large point cloud data as simple as any other data source. There's no reason to be scared or afraid is the wrong word to use here, but a lot of people are reluctant to use a large data just because it is large and time consuming and stuff. Not anymore in the industry, especially with Autodesk solution. But it is finally resonating with the users and the industry. This was the idea actually I had quite some time back as well, when I joined Autodesk, even slightly before that. But timing wasn't right. I didn't have enough power to make things happen. But the last few years, I really got the good opportunity to lead some couple of great teams in reality solutions and made these things possible. And that's what's been coming out last year, a couple of releases, and this year release, and we're getting up for another release as well. Very key thing is, apart from this point cloud sharing and visualization, extracting features, design. At the end of the day, point cloud is a data. You're not after data. Data is a means to an end. In this case, the end is the information from it. That is something you can take it and use it in your design. In this case, we started with a civil infrastructure design. We started calling it as a scan to design. So basically, any feature lines, break lines you want to extract, ADA ramp, curbs, top and bottom of the curbs, walls, pretty much any geometry for civil infrastructure, and it could be geometry for anything. With the latest release, users can extract anything they can see, anything they want from the point cloud data as simple as possible, directly from the browser. By the way, you don't have to download any point cloud data. Just use it, collaboratively extract it from the browser, no matter which part of the world you live in. Browser is the browser. You can access the ACC projects. And that's what we've achieved this year. And we continue to fine tune that too. We understand this is a design workflow. It's a little bit hard to change the existing workflow because customers are used to the existing different ways of doing this. But slowly but surely, it is changing. We're getting a lot of good feedback from the customers.
Yeah, and it really is. It's working, right? We're seeing, much more, at least on my end, much more interest and people who are willing to adapt to it because the data is so much easier to work with now than it was even like 4 or 5 years ago. It moves so much easier, so much faster, and it's so much easier to manipulate. And like you said, just make a base data source rather than this complex secondary system. So.
Exactly, yeah. And also with the technology, the cloud and stuff, it makes it even more possible to make these things happen. And with the last few years of people working from home and all those stuff, this cloud-based workflows is kind of like a, dream come true. And I'm glad people are using it.
Yeah. So, Rocco, on your side, I know we have been seeing just a ton of interest in point cloud integrations lately. Do you find that our clients are more interested in the point cloud for the building side or point cloud for the infrastructure civil end?
I think it's a combination of both, really. And I think that the evolution in technology, it makes it more attractive, right? I mean, gone are the days when you'd be working with large files and boom, there goes your whole system just crashed. And you just lost all that data. So I think, the word is getting out on the street. And so there's interest from both angles from what I see.
Okay. So, Ramesh, on the Autodesk side, right, on the reality capture focus, are you focused more around, building architectural, or are you still driving a heavy focus on infrastructure as your main space?
So in short, both, the reality solution or point cloud is growing on how it is being used. If users only using for one purpose, it's not going to grow, and it won't grow like how it is doing today. The key aspect is previously users are using just for extracting break lines. The lines, even though the point clouds carry a lot of information, it's funny, every time we talk about the point cloud or collection, let's say you're going to buy a sensor. The first question people ask is, how high resolution is this? How many points per square feet or square meter I can get? All those questions come through while buying, but at the end they use break lines that are like, a few meters apart or something, interpolate between that. You're not taking the full potential of the point clouds you collect and its capabilities for scan to design. So that is changing now. We are trying to get the industry to this new era of using point clouds more than just filling the gaps. Even though that's how it started, now we have more potential to it. And that is spanning both infrastructure and the building and architectural. Just to keep those communication or conversation simple, we started using the term scan to design and scan to BIM. Essentially, it's the information extraction, but when you say scan to design, it's kind of like a detailed design, geometries and corresponding attributes, extract it and use it for your design purpose, detailed design purpose. Usually civil infrastructure, road design, transportation design comes to the mind, but it obviously spans way more than that. But from the building and architectural perspective, we started calling it as a scan to BIM, extracting a 3D BIM information. So we're kind of going towards the concept of design is anything. Anything you design is a design. And BIM is also for anything. Every time I talk as a BIM, people always think it's the buildings or architectural related because BIM starts with the word building, but that's not that building it's referring to. For example, even in Autodesk, even before we started this whole scan to BIM, even in our civil infrastructure design, like a bridge design, Ara Shikian is one of the product managers in Autodesk, was doing a fantastic job on bridge design and InfraWorks and Civil 3D and Revit and Inventor, taking those BIM model, parametric model into their bridge design aspect. So it's been in the mill for quite some time. Now we are leveraging the point cloud to the fullest for civil infrastructure and the buildings, and it actually grows more. Not surprisingly or surprisingly, how you see it. Last couple of months, my discussions are all with MEP customers, the automotive customers, the plant design customers, and so on. Now they know that Reality Capture ReCap Pro can offer these solutions. They're asking how they can leverage this into their applications. So from Autodesk side, we are treating point clouds as a snapshot of the real world existing conditions. It can be used for a variety of purposes. There is no reason to corner it to one. Of course, each field or workflow has its unique needs, but there's always a fundamental thread behind that, which is what my team and I identified and sharpening it to provide various tools to users to fit their needs.
That's a good answer. I like it. It really is. You're just seeing it. I mean, in every aspect, right? From people designing, watches all the way up through, full-blown airports, all using the reality capture and its integration. It's really amazing where that whole industry is going. All right. So I tell you what, let's take a quick break here to let our sponsors have a word. But when we get back, I do want to get into some of the latest news items and what Autodesk's planning for the future in the reality capture space. So stand by, folks. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. The sponsor for today's episode of the Cattle Call Podcast is Matterport. Now, you guys know Matterport. They've been all over the world. We see them all the time getting, 3D laser scans and photogrammetric digital twins for all of our real estate development houses and all of that great stuff we see out there. But what I really want you guys to understand about Matterport is that it does so much more than just those static models. One of the really amazing things that you can do with Matterport is you can integrate links and hyperlinks to dashboards and controls. We can link to videos. We can link to warranty information, manufacturing information. Think of it like this. If you could go into a digital twin model, have your clients and your coworkers walk through it, pick a piece of equipment, click on it, and get all the information on the make, the model, the manufacturer, when it was last updated, how much does it cost, how do I order a new one? Anything that you could conceive of, whether it's in a manufacturing space, a facility management system, or on the construction job site. We can do all of that and so much more in Matterport. It's not just 3D scanning, it's a lot more. So Rocco, why don't you tell these folks how we work with Matterport and how they can reach out to find more?
Yeah, whether it's the integration with Bluebeam, products like Bluebeam or Procore, or even Adobe, we can help you from the consulting standpoint. If you're looking for help on the scanning end, we can help. If you're looking to buy the cameras, we can help. So feel free to reach out to us. Website is zentechconsultants.net. Give us a ring, 866-824-4459, or drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
There you go, folks. Matterport, so much more than you ever thought it was, and sponsoring the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast. We're talking with Ramesh Sridharan of Autodesk today, and we're talking about the reality capture side of things in the new 2025 release. And in the first half, we kind of talked about what's been added that's important to know about. And in this half of the show, I want to hit on, some new and upcoming items in the Autodesk world as it relates to this space. And one of the big things that was recently announced was the Autodesk purchase of PointFuse. That's a big integration announcement, and it's no doubt going to have a really big impact on how people work with reality capture data and point clouds moving forward. So, Ramesh, can you kind of explain to listeners, what PointFuse is and why Autodesk thought it was important to kind of bring them under their umbrella?
Absolutely. So, like we had the previous question before, we are trying to find the fundamental thread of how to leverage this point cloud for different applications, right? It's funny, I had the same or similar conversation with one of the customers recently. I used this example, hopefully it fits here. The best example I can think of is like a screwdriver set. If you can go and buy a Phillips head for the purpose, and you can use it for that purpose only. Sure, you can tweak it and make everything out of it, but there is a limitation to it, right? But instead, providing the users with a screwdriver set where the head can be changed depending on the purpose, but the base screwdriver remains the same. Simple example, but that's kind of what we are trying to come up with reality solutions for the BIM modeling. Customers have different needs. Someone wants to just use the point cloud on top of the BIM model and see the design verification or changes what happened, or they want to compare different point clouds they collected with 2 different weeks or months or whatever, or some people want to create a intelligent mesh or something for visualization and compare, and obviously creating a complete BIM model for a digital twin and smart cities. So when you talk about this whole scan to BIM, it's a different personas, different users. Even each user has a different expectation for how do we call it, deliverables or an export from the point cloud. And we want to make sure we address and provide that screwdriver set for the customer, not just one tool for them to fiddle with. That was one of the main reasons we went with PointFuse, because they have their scan to segmented mesh approach, where point clouds can be intelligently segmented into a different objects, quote unquote, as a mesh, and user can use it for pretty much everything I said before. You want to compare directly, or you want to do the point clouds comparison, or take the mesh and do a clash or collision detection with the utmost accuracy you want, or convert that into a BIM model. So it kind of fits to that need. And that was the main reason we acquired PointFuse technology. The PointFuse team, along with the intellectual property and technology, we acquired a development team of 5 people. They're all based in London, doing a phenomenal job. We are working on integrating that as a part of the ReCap Pro solution.
Nice. Good analogy, too. I like the screwdriver set analogy. That works. So I tell you what, one of the things, I guess, that always seems to come up, right, whenever a big corporation like Autodesk buys up a smaller tech firm is, what is going to happen to the existing users, right? And when can folks expect to see the technology appear in their daily workflows, right? And now look, this purchase was only announced a month or two back. So I'm guessing that we need to give, some time for, Ramesh and his guys to kind of integrate it before we start clamoring for updates. So, Ramesh, with that said, what's kind of the timeline or roadmap for integrating PointFuse technology into the mainstream Autodesk reality capture systems?
Absolutely. In Autodesk, we usually don't give out the dates up in the air. But one thing I'm a very strong believer is anything we work with, in this case, obviously the PointFuse technology, but anything we work with, kind of get into a reasonable phase and let customers, users play with it. Sometimes if you make all those assumptions in the beginning, you create something, by the time you're done creating, it's no longer what customer expected in the beginning. We do not want to be in that position. And we try to keep this pretty much every single development I have done in the past 10 years, even beyond with Autodesk and before. So we are maintaining that. You're absolutely right. We just started integrating the PointFuse team. They just finished finding where the office in the office room they can work with. But now we are in accelerated mode. So without telling the exact time, because we are still working on it, but users can definitely expect things soon this year as an alpha and beta version. And we plan to release the product following that, ironing out the wrinkles based on the user feedback and so on. And because we're, like I said before, technology is not great when it just provides a solution, right? Technology is great only when it solves a problem the way the user wants. Just because I have an answer doesn't mean the user is going to like it. So we would like to work the way the customers want. And that's a big difference between offering a solution and solving the core problem. Obviously, later is what we aspire to do. Actually, this might be a good time to maybe give a shout out to all the audience listening to this, your podcast. Please reach out. And this is the best time to be part of this revolution. And we are actively listening from the ReCap team, your inputs and listening to your inputs and ready to create something users can directly and easily use for the projects.
There you go. And I love the way you guys do that. Once you get, you have a roadmap site, right, that they can hit?
Yes, yeah. That's a public roadmap site they can check, and they can even vote for it. And I request for new ideas as well.
Outstanding. So, all right. So, Rocco, let's wake you up. You're over there snoring. And I know that this is, I always ask you this whenever Ramesh is on, because I like our listeners to keep kind of track of trends. But, from your standpoint, have you seen a lot of new growth in companies purchasing and working with reality capture and point cloud systems that weren't before?
Look, all I can say is when I'm sleeping, I don't hear myself snoring. So I don't know what you're talking about over there.
Believe me, all the listeners hear you. At least put the system on mute next time, would you? We see an uneven level of interest. I mean, it's not, and we don't market it, this technology a ton here at Zentech. So that's probably the reason why we don't see a lot of interest. But there's an even pace of interest. And like I was saying before, like we were all saying before, the technology's evolved to make it more attractive, right? I mean, a couple years back, you heard about this stuff and it's like, oh, I'm not touching that. I've heard horror stories, and
And with the evolution, it just made it a lot easier. And so we're having more conversations for sure.
Okay. All right. So I tell you what, guys, I'm a fan of trends and future planning. And I think it always helps to have a solid idea of where the big name players like Autodesk are going over the next few years with their tech. ReCap is always changing so quickly, and it's bringing so much innovation to our space. I always like to get Ramesh to kind of help us keep track of what's coming our way next. So, Ramesh, what as the big director now, what are your big targets, I guess, for ReCap over the next year or two?
Absolutely. Let me use a different analogy this time. I like this one too. It's like seeing an optometrist, right? When you look at something, initially it's blurry, then you keep changing lenses, update it, it gets better and better until you see it much clearer, and the doctor can understand what you're looking. But the target didn't change. Target is still there. It might get better, but it's still there. I like the similar analogy in our workflow too. So we are working towards this automated scan to BIM as the main target, and everything you saw last couple of years, and what we just talked about, what we plan to release this year and moving forward, it's going to make that particular target more and more clearer, so user can touch it and use it and feel it, and that's where we are trying to do. From Autodesk, especially from Reality Solutions team side, we like to put our work speak for ourselves as best as we can, obviously. So Autodesk, say scan to BIM, it's a little bit vague. It can be a little bit vague. So what this means is basically we want users to directly able to use point clouds for their design and modeling, period. I know we talked about segmented mesh and all those things, BIM generation we talked about today. They should all go to the back end. They will go to the back end and just work behind the screen for the users. When user get the point cloud, they see it, they click it, they pick the object what they want, use it. It should be as simple and straightforward. Leveraged by the fancy words everyone's using today, AI and ML. We also use it, but we would like it to work behind the screen. So it should be seamless, transparent to the user, and get their job done. That's where we're going towards, just leveraging point cloud fully, finishing their scan to BIM, use AI and ML for the practical use and learn from it. That's kind of what I would say in the next year or two as a big target for ReCap.
I like that. I like that as a target. That's exactly the way that it should be going. So I'm fully in support of what you're doing there, sir. So, all right, everybody, as always, right, when we get towards the end of a show with a guest on, I like to let them go off script a bit and tell us about something that they think is important that I did not think to ask them about. So I'm going to do that with Ramesh here and say, Ramesh, what else do you want people to know about either the future or your current state of the reality capture space?
Absolutely. Everything, we were talking in our podcast, last couple of years back is now getting more and current. Customers can use it, and it all because of our team. So I should definitely give a shout out to our Reality Solutions development team, and with some of the latest developments accelerating the PointFuse. The future is PointFuse technology and the PointFuse team. The future is definitely getting clearer. And similarly, when I'm talking with like 3 or 4 new customers every week, and everyone brings new challenge to the table, right? It's really refreshing and encouraging to talk to them, especially when customer pushes back on something, challenge what your thought process, come with a different problem and make us think in a different way and enhance it. It's fantastic. And since I'm in the industry for about 23 years, I don't want to date myself. I'm still 30. You know that, right?
You started young. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Way young, yeah. So every decade has a different challenge. I've seen that, but mostly, one of the big challenge we had was educating the users on the new technology. Since the time LiDAR came, the first 5, 7, 10 years on telling users, this is a LiDAR, you can use it. And those are the challenges. This decade in my career is significantly different. Users are super smart, and they are well aware of the point cloud. They're well aware of the cloud technologies, the 3D models. They understand. They also understand what some of them using their yesterday solution, and they know they want to change, but it's not that easy to change overnight. And they understand yesterday's solution will not work for tomorrow. They need to have a fundamental change in their perspective and all those things. They understand that, which is kind of very refreshing to work with the new, not a new team, those new customers mentality, and how much they're working with their team to make this workflow change and open-mindedly working with us is very, very refreshing, like I said. And I would say that's kind of like a future state of the reality capture space, because from Autodesk or anyone for that matter, you can always create new tools, new buttons, new features, new workflows. But at the end of the day, it should solve the customer's problem. Customers should use it and they should achieve something which they could not achieve before, or something achieved faster. And that is the future trend. And with this technology and the AI, ML, all those things, that kind of definitely working towards that. And as I mentioned before, the foundational work we are adding is in sync with every single user we're talking to. I'm really happy to know that we are in the right direction and we are marching as fast as we can.
Yeah. And look, so I will give prop to guys like you and Tim Yaris, right, and some of the other folks over there at Autodesk who's really shifted that. It wasn't always the case, not just at Autodesk, but in most major software developers. A lot of the times it was, decisions about where you were going and what you were going to do were driven from the top down, right? The boardrooms and the marketing and the financial guys made decisions and then shoved it downhill to the users who were like, yeah, that's not what we need. And you guys have switched that. You're doing it the other way, and I think that it goes a long way towards making your products so much more user-friendly and so much more adaptable, because you're really taking the time to find out what people need before you start, coming up with the answer, like you said, right? Get the target before you start pulling out the lenses.
Exactly, yeah.
So, all right, folks. With that, we're going to get out of here. But I want to thank Ramesh. I would say once more, but this is really twice more for being here. But really, Ramesh, I appreciate your being patient enough to do this with us a second time. And as always, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so much.
Hey, absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Rocco.
All right, guys. We're going to bounce, and we'll catch you next time on the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.